Welcome to another stream here.
I'm like, dude, that intro though. What?
You like that intro?
With the music, it's
Yeah.
so it's got vibes.
Thank you. I'm making a new one though, but yeah, I appreciate the comment. It's all licensed by Adobe. It's paid music basically. I had to pay money for it, but hopefully I can get proper professional to make something more fancy, I suppose. But yeah, I was saying welcome to the stream. It's been a while since I've done a stream, mostly because I've been traveling and catching up with other stuff and helping students and everything. But we're back a little bit. This would be our last stream for the year because I'm traveling again next month. And yeah, people are busy anyway. So not like you guys want to watch the stream during Christmas and New Year anyway, right? You got lots of things to do. Today we have Jeremiah joining us from Dinusty Empire. If you guys don't know, he has his own Discord, own website, own community. Definitely recommend going there, especially if you want to learn 3D stuff and 3D modeling and texturing and whatnot. He has his own mentorship as well. For those who don't know, I specialize in the lighting part, which is why we're teaming up today, so he can critique a little bit more on the stuff I don't necessarily pay attention to or don't want to critique, and I can critique the stuff I want to critique on. So it's like two of the best that everyone gets, basically.
Like you can give an opinion, just like, oh, it's not my territory, but this is how I feel.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about, but hey, this is why I think, even though it's been, I don't know, 10 years since I touched 3D software, probably, to be fair. So it's really not really something I'm that knowledgeable, to be honest, even though I talk to my 3D team all the time. Alba, what's your, Alba, can you type in the private chat your ArtStation link? Because I don't seem to find your name on the link. Maybe yours was the one that didn't work, because there was one link that didn't show up. So if you can paste your ArtStation link in the private chat, I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much. Jeremiah, do you want to introduce yourself again, or yourself a little bit, maybe your background?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a lead environment artist at Massive in Sweden, but yeah, I've been in games for like, I don't even know what it is. 2007, I joined. I got to enjoy the 2008 housing market crash that affected games. That was fun. But yeah, I've been doing environment art since 2007. Moved to Sweden from Seattle, and I've just been running an art community where we just try to be better artists, and we work together to do that. It's mainly focused around environment art, but we kind of hit everything. So it's just a nice place to be. Just trying to make a friendly, safe area that everyone can just learn. That's
Definitely.
the goal.
I do stop by his stream time to time because it's always fun and interesting and relaxing.
Oh yeah, I stream too.
He streams a lot though. Yeah, you do that 3 times a week.
Yeah, right now it's 2 times a week because around this time of the year it gets really busy. So I try to, mental health's important. So we lower it a little bit, have a little bit of free time to recharge.
Yeah, a little bit.
But yeah, usually it's 3 times a week.
Yeah, I used to do once a week, and then I stopped after August. And I was like, so much work trying to catch the people and organize. So I'm looking for a new model to use in the coming days. Braden, thank you. I have your link. It's all good. Alba, thank you. I found your link. So, Jeremiah, do you have your links up on your side as well?
Links on my site?
Yes.
Oh, you mean on my side? I see what you're saying. Yes,
eventually I'm going to have you share your screen so you can talk through a little bit your opinion as well. And I will just go back and forth and pretend who's back. But before we start, I like to be interactive with my people, and I put it on the screen. Hello, Manuel. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you. David, I don't know why you're on LinkedIn hanging out, but thank you nonetheless. And you, Jeremiah, thank you for commenting yourself. I really appreciate that as well. Galo, hey. Fateh, loyal as always on tune, always online, even though he's in Pakistan. I don't know, it's probably a bit late now, but we appreciate it. So cool. So do you want to go first, maybe? And the first one I was thinking you could look at is Gamal God's link. Do you want me to send it to you in the private chat for everyone?
Yes. Yeah, that one because I've just clicked the ones that are in chat right now. So
If I send the one out from my, you can look at the private chat in this window, and you can see my name, and you can see it said Jimito is his nickname on our station.
Okay, so, oh man, I think sharing my screen is going to be. I just realized this because it's a ultra wide. Maybe I'll share on my other thingy. Let's see here.
It's up to you, my friend.
Screen
My first
share.
feedback while you wait
Yeah.
is that Gamal God, your our station link should have your name in it. So Jimito, if someone looks for you, you know, in terms of SEO, you probably want to make sure it has your actual name when people are looking up your nickname on our station. At least that's my recommendation. You can see the two links above; they have their name in it. On it. All right, so let's add Mr. Jeremiah's around.
I know I have a message I have not read. Anyways, I always see that when I'm reviewing portfolios. Yeah, so junior 3D environment artist, Cairo, Egypt. What I usually look at is when I see environment artists, I tend to not look at I don't like seeing people say, oh, I'm a student, or because we're all kind of students forever. But if I look at the portfolio right now, what I'm seeing is actually someone who looks like they're more interested in prop art or weapons. So like just right off the bat, it kind of feels like there's a bit of a mismatch with what you're displaying versus like what you want to be. The Overwatch fan art. I don't know if when you look at portfolios, are you looking in order? Because usually I'll look in order from the end and go my way up. But yeah,
I mean, for me, it depends. Like, so certain people, they have a lot, a bit maybe too much on the R station. So obviously, I would look probably from left top and then on the way down, rather than down. But I guess what you're saying is you're assuming the oldest one is at the bottom, right?
Yeah, usually I'll ask as well. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that also because like this is 3 years ago.
Because I organize normally my portfolio in color scheme, so it's like, because I do like things, it's like dark, bright, dark, bright, dark, bright, dark, bright. So there's like a system.
Of course
to
you
it.
do that. So okay, so we've got the recorder is 3 years ago, and then we've got this pistol 2 years ago. I'm no weapons expert, right? But when I look at weapons, for me, it's all about understanding the materials and making sure that your PBR values are correct. Because like you can probably attest to this with lighting. If the PBR values are wrong, like lighting can't help you. Whereas like before PBR, lighting could kind of like make everything just look good. You could just kind of make it work. But now everything has to be pretty accurate in order for it to excel.
Yeah, and also the angle, you know, the one you have up now with this gunfire. Also, the angle is a bit odd, and there's some blur effect in the top. Also, I don't know what's going on with the green thing. It's
this one here.
The bullet falling out. It's a bit out of focus.
It's in action, right?
Yeah. So
it's supposed to be like, yeah. I do like this. It's maybe with the FOV being so shallow, it's like it squishes it down. You get this orthographic type of feel.
Yeah. I think you need to be careful as well with the fire effect. The gunfire looks like when you have New Year's Eve, you have some of those just goes up. So I think unless you're very experienced, yeah, it looks like a flare. I don't know if it's a flare gun, but it looks like a flare for a handgun.
The other thing I think I would say is like with the metal being so dark, I think the environment that your asset is in, as far as like the HDR, is reflecting and making this material look much darker than it actually is. I wonder if this is where I wish I had like a real time. See, when I look at the textures as well, I don't know. When I look at a weapon, it depends how the material's been treated. Because we're in PBR, you want to think physical all the time, right? So is this powder coated? I'm assuming so. And then the scratches are exposing the raw metal. And then like you're telling stories in your roughness, which is really good. But I'm trying to figure out, like, is it powder coated in such a black type of material that the pistol ends up being really, really dark? It might be too dark. I think it's within PBR range. It's just really dark. And that's why I kind of err on the HDR side, where I'm like, oh, maybe the environment that it's reflecting back is quite dark. But did you want to say anything else on this? Because I was just going to kind of...
No, I think I'll let you progress for now, and you can, because it's a learning opportunity for me as well to see what you spot. And
oh yeah, you're learning from? Oh wow, okay, all right. This dagger 7 months ago. I usually look at time to try and get a sense of like where someone is at, in their skill level. This one I actually really like. The dagger itself, like the blade, feels strange to me. Maybe there's just the way it's polished feels odd, but this like horn, I'm assuming this is like a horn, dude.
It comes
Anyways,
I wish some of these people come from your community, obviously, as well.
I'm assuming this is a horn, right? But I love that gradient of wear and aging. If there was like something that was building up on the inside there, I think that would push it even further. But I do like that type of gradient. I don't know what the surface is though when I look at the material itself, like the roughness. It's usually the roughness is off, and that's what hints me to like, oh, what is this made out of? Like if it's bone,
plastic or something to me. Or
right now, yeah. Like if it's wood or if it's bone. Like the wear here makes me think bone, because it becomes lighter and whatnot. But if it's bone, it probably has a pretty chalky attribute to the surface. So the roughness is going to be really high. The other thing too is, depending on how the bone reacts to lighting, you may get a bit of a subsurface attribute to it. So in that sense, you could soften the look of it even further if you combine both of those. I just saw a funny message from my my dad just logged into WoW. Anyways,
why not?
I love this presentation. I think if it was on a surface that was more recognizable, like if it was a cloth with a little bit of folds in there, you get a lot more like dynamic lighting and shadows that are just kind of bouncing around the scene. Even if it's just these props, I think that could push it further. I'm usually not too much of a fan of blank backgrounds. This one's all right with the gradients. I guess the only fear with gradients is to watch out for compression, because it usually will crush your gradients down and make weird patterns. But yeah, you have anything on this one?
I mean, for me, so you're saying the materials are correct on the blade?
I don't know. Something's off.
Yes.
Something is off. Maybe the way the brushed pattern on it.
Yeah.
I don't look at enough blades.
No, I mean, obviously I'm looking at the real things as you're talking, and we're going, okay. So for me, I think part of the presentation, even if you don't do a lot with the environment and having it on a wood stub or something to enhance the presentation of your knives, or in a stub or something, for me it looks like, when I say overcast lighting, it means it's very flat lighting. So I would have appreciated more lighting on terms of highlighting the blade a bit to make it more reflective, because it's lacking that reflective that I would like to see on knives. And if you go in real life and you look at references, they are quite reflective based on the angle, and you have quite an angle, and there's no sign of environment that's very clear, wood, whatever environment you would go for. And it's the same with the wood as well. But as Jeremiah is saying, the wood could be anything, but it looks a bit plastic. So if it was bone, which it might be, and I don't know, if you want to type in the private chat to let us know what it is, feel comfortable to do it. But if you're online, and let's see, where are you? What's the name? Gamal. So we're gonna add you into the call now, so you can actually explain a little bit. There you go.
Hey.
Hey man.
Hello.
Yo, dude.
So it's like it's an ivory, And yeah, I think the roughness is a bit off.
Yeah. So for me, lighting is part of any artist, 3D artist, environment art is definitely something I recommend people to look up and learn a little bit more about. And part of that is the reflection, where you put the reflection, if it's in engine or if it's in Maya, ZBrush, doesn't really matter. Getting those highlights, getting those specular effects a bit visible as well. That is going to enhance your presentation and believability. Right now, it looks like you took a very soft light, probably an area light, because you can see on the shadows, they're very diffuse. And the problem with that, it gives you just a flat lighting. What you want to do is you want to use spotlights, kind of rim the edges of the light, make sure you use SGRI backdrop or something from Maya, just to enhance the look a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want me to put up some real examples to illustrate a bit more? Do you have references? That's one of the challenges with people who do it. Is I like to see ArtStation that you can show me some references as well, because it gives it shows us if you have the ability to spot things in reference. If you have a trained eye.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually, I was hoping to see some the reference or references that you used to compile what you created, because then you can see like, oh, if the reference literally looks like this, then you actually were nailing it, right? So maybe it's actually more accurate than we realize. But we don't have the reference, so we don't know.
Okay, I'm now searching for the reference.
Cool. While you search for it, we'll move on to the next pieces in your portfolio, see if there's a pattern we can spot.
I mean, I think with the Overwatch fan art, this one's much more of a stylized approach, right? I don't know if I guess because you're in the call, are you focusing on stylized, or do you want to go more realistic?
Yeah, nice. Realistic is my focus now. Mm-hmm. So it was an art test for the company that I work for now.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, despite it being stylized, like just seeing how you're using your UVs and what's considered duplicate meshes is quite an interesting way of visualizing and understanding how you how you build things or how you think about reuse. Scroll through this. Yeah, in the reference. Yeah, so honestly, I would move on from this one and just go to the next one. Did you want to comment on anything on here? I think it looks.
Can I see the reference?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 second. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the Overwatch fan art reference, it's obviously for me, I can see there's more specular reflective surfaces, which again is twofold. It's understanding how materials interact with your lighting. So either the materials are correct, but you didn't do the correct lighting according to your reference and look, or it's both. You can look at the surface on the black side. You can look at the specular effect on the curves. That is very highlighted in the references, but it's not highlighted in your work. It's more diffuse, I would say, according to me, in your actual work compared to the presentation of the fan art. So these are the things I pay attention to. You can, it's missing that. In fact, you should have added more specular. You can see you try doing it, which is a very good job, but it's spread out a bit, suggesting you have either a very big light source or you didn't pull in enough specular detail on your surfaces, basically. But still, very good job.
When I like.
That's where you come. That's where you come in, Jeremiah. What is it?
Well, because like I see a highlight here, so the roughness looks like it's maybe at like 0.5 or 0.6. I think it just needs to be lower, right? So that you're like what you're saying, these highlights become sharper, reflectivity of anything starts to show up in the surfaces.
Yeah, because if you look at the fan art, and again, if you have a reference, there's pros and cons, because I will look at the reference and I will teach you and explain what I am seeing with my eyes, and I can see the reflection, I can see it's a very tight hotspot of the reflection. You can see it on the left side on the gray curve, for example, and on the surface. It's very tight, while yours is spreading out a bit. So these are the details I think any artist should be able to understand and look for. And of course, it is obviously kind of related to lighting, but it also is your material needs to be updated to so the lighting can react correctly to. You can see it on the bottom left black side of the left image. You can see that reflection and highlight on the black surface, which you don't see as much on your image again either.
It actually almost feels like glass, or like if you were to use a clear coat shader, you might get a very similar kind of styled effect.
Yeah. This is my observation and my recommendation. It doesn't mean has to be like that. It could be an artistic reason that you want to do differently, but unless it's in the comment, in the text, in your station, I'm going to assume you didn't notice it, you don't know what's going on. And that's, to me, means, there's always room for development, and we are learning and we're all developing. But that's my observation.
Was that your siren? Amit?
Yes, I live in the middle of London, so I apologize ahead of time if you hear sirens every 5 minutes. I am not the one who's wanted. They're not looking for me. They're not outside my apartment trying to come in. It's just I happen to live in a very populated area of cops and hospitals. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, it's like yeah. Go ahead.
I have uploaded the reference of the digger.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you can see in this reference, notice the reflection and spectra again. Notice the different highlights on the...
Wait, where's the reference? I'm like, hang on. Wait a minute. Dude, this is crazy. I have like multiple chats happening.
I only have one.
I'm like, yeah.
Very difficult for me. It's a lot of work.
Yes, living in the multiverse.
Just check. So yeah, it's on the portfolio review channel. His image.
Oh, I see. All right.
It's you can see the. I think you can comment this because you can see the materials on the surface. It's actually not even metal. I think it looks very old actually.
Yeah, I got it. There we go. Yeah, it's really diffused on the surface.
Yeah, but notice the edges.
Yeah, the edges on the.
Yeah, these are the details I like to see in the actual work as well. The blade is different though from your reference. If we look at his actual blade that he did, it's you're my main screen suddenly, even though I could probably go on my own screen and share as well. But so yeah, I think so I would reverse my feedback and say you didn't make it diffuse enough.
Yeah, no, you're right, because right now it feels like on the roughness scale you're maybe sitting at like a 0.6, but in here it looks like it's even like 0.8 or 0.9, like it's really wide. And then maybe this is kind of why I like to see, we don't have showing the maps and seeing where your roughness values are at. That can really help with understanding how you're perceiving roughness, right? So for example, where it's light, maybe those values are actually less rough than the darker areas, just because I'm assuming this is smoother, just as an assumption compared to this. Usually if you're holding this a lot, it's going to the surface is just going to smooth over time. Yeah. But yeah.
It's more of a bevel top on the top as well, which is why you get this nice specular on the source image on the top of the blade. There's still some specular on the top because it's beveled rather than sharp. It's smooth. I don't really know what material it is though. I can't even tell if is it like super old metal or.
I mean, it's got all this micro pitting that's happening.
Yeah.
Which,
so I would like
I
to
know
see
that you got that in there.
Yeah.
But I think see that the bevel is there, but
Yeah.
that edge is super sharp, right? If you bevel the bevel, you get that little edge to soften up a little bit more. Then you'll start to get those kind of like those smooth curves in the way the surface reads when light hits it.
Cool. You can give a quick feedback on the rest of the stuff if you want, Jeremiah, and I think we should move on because we need to start kicking out people so the other people can join the stream as well.
Sure. Yeah, so I was just gonna say, like, when you look at some of your more recent stuff, this is great that you're showing wireframes now. I think we don't show those enough these days. We're kind of avoiding it because Nanite gives us the secret sauce, and we think we can always just use Nanite. But it's super fun. Don't get me wrong. But you can see the difference in the material types is really good. Like this is feeling much more. I think this is actually ivory as well, if I had to guess. Yeah. This just the values in your roughness and the variation you're getting between the materials is better. The blade feels very strange to me. It's like hyper real, I guess, if you want to call it that. Like there's a lot of emphasis on details, but like the way it's presented on the roughness side of things makes it very intense to look at. Like I don't know what you have to do to metal to make it break up like this. Like it kind of looks like there's some form of an acid path or like pass that happened on it. Yeah. And then maybe the saturation on this wood is maybe a little high.
I think there's a disconnection between two of your sides, as kind of Jeremiah is stating. One side looks a bit weird and acidy like, and then this side has the engraving intact, which is someone who just came from a Japanese gallery looking at weapons and everything. You know, if one side is unclear, the other side would also be kind of having the same traces, and you have it on the bottom of the engraving, but you don't have it on top of the engraving on the same level. And that to me is kind of it looks like the person used just half of the blade on one side. You know, something happened on one side, but the other side is kind of still pretty and intact, if that makes sense. That's something I noticed as well.
Yeah, and that I can look at just the last one here because this one looks like things are material wise, like surface wise, things are starting to click. This is 6 months ago as well, but the attention to surface detail and the subtleties that you're pushing through your roughness, there's a lot more going on here. I'm actually curious. Something clicked, I think, and you're pushing your surfaces more with subtlety. Like it's not subtle in some shots just because I think you're pushing to show the subtleties themselves, but I think enjoying and really leaning into all those subtleties in your roughness is probably better than emphasizing it to show it. You're muting yourself. But this is definitely stronger. I would show the wireframe on this, and then I think my last notes on this would be like, if you want to be an environment artist, I would want to see more environments. But if you want to be doing like realistic weapons or props, I would push in that direction and just make it clear in your portfolio.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have any final words, Gamal, before I forever kick you out of this stream?
Waiting.
Was it useful? Was it useful feedback?
Yeah.
Do you want to have anything question?
Yeah, I actually was like to go further on making environments. I'm making a one now, but it's not finished yet. Yeah, it need more works for like sculpting and making materials, but
cool. Well, keep up the good work. You know, you don't give up, and you already know about Dinusty Empire servers as well, because you obviously got feedback for one of your PCs. So just go there and keep asking for feedback, because obviously it's paying off. And yeah, thank you for tuning onto the stream and keep watching. Maybe you'll pick up a few advice as we go through the rest of the portfolio as well.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, it's good to meet you
as well.
Bye-bye.
See you. All right, Pulgar was kicked out in case the remaining people need to jump into the stream. The next person I was thinking we could go for was Marvin. I'll put the link down in the private chat. Oh, I really need some. If we're going to keep doing this, I need to buy a new screen.
Yes.
So that's Marvin's. And Marvin, you're here. So this time I'll remember and add people.
Surprise!
Last minute. Don't worry, I can see your camera, so I know if you're not doing anything. That shouldn't be on stream. So yeah,
Marvin, myself so soon.
Don't worry.
Surprise.
We're trying to be quick now. So yeah, is there anything we should know, Marvin, before we start?
I'm a PD student from Germany, so my art portfolio isn't 100% up to date. I have been very busy with my bachelor's degree recently, so I couldn't update the stuff, or I couldn't post the stuff that I did over the past 6 months yet. I did the little barrels and the environment scene with the pickaxe. They are from the last 6 months, but the rest is a tiny bit older. But I still would like some feedback on those because they still kind of represent what I have been doing over the last 3 years of 3D art.
Well, you want to start with this one, Amit?
I like that you start. It gives me a good base.
You want me to? Okay, I'll throw the canvas. out. Let's see here. So 3D environment or 3D artist. I don't know if you want to do environments or not. Usually
environment is my focus, yeah.
Okay.
I want it to be my focus. Through my internship in the last half year, I discovered my passion for it. Ironically, I did environments before, but I wasn't really thinking about getting into it back then. But I learned about Unreal Engine and stuff over the last 6 months, and now I kind of fell in love with everything.
I like this one. Yeah, it's so if we're looking at environments and that's kind of like your focus, I'll just grab some of the older environments that you have, and then we'll see like where there's progress and then where there's things that have kind of not shifted yet.
Yeah, but I have to mention before, maybe those are kit bashed. At least this was in my in my first month or two in 3D, and we had to exercise to create a still life. So I kit bashed this stuff because I obviously wasn't able to model any of this.
So wait, when you say kit bash, is it like grabbing from like marketplaces and such?
Polyhaven, for example, like the free website, and Sketchfab and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So everything is basically you're working on composition then with this one.
Yeah, those are primarily composition works. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I wrote a composition and lighting study, because I didn't want to mislead people.
Yeah. You know how often I don't read this?
You shouldn't have said this was a lighting study, because now we're gonna grab it to put it in the shot.
So I gotta learn because lighting is one of my biggest weaknesses.
That's how you learn, though, right? So what I'll say before we give it to the lighting professional is just looking at scale of things. So knowing the size of stuff, like right now, I would say these cassettes feel like they're. I mean, I know this is 2 years ago, so I'm not expecting you to go back and adjust things. But these cassettes feel like they're maybe about half the size. They might be a little, maybe not that small, but they're smaller. I can feel this. There's a size discrepancy, especially with the TV. And then the Game Boy. That Game Boy feels like a brick when I think about it. Like it's so stupidly big.
True.
But yeah, oh man, my dog's scratching the door. But so for me, it's scale and then watching out for these types of things. So you've got this line here. So this is like the edge of the table, I assume. And then you have this camera lining up exactly with this. This is what we call a tangent. So you're going to want to watch out for tangents maybe you already know this because this is 2 years old, but yeah, when you get tangent lines, you got to be really careful with those. Like there's this one too, where this one's not as bad, but it's there. So basically where the cartridge meets the line on the wall.
So I should avoid that those things align with each other.
Yeah, it's better to either have it go over it and break the line, or to go under it and just avoid the line. And it's the same here. And usually breaking the line helps you remove another issue that you tend to see with environments is laser lines. So there's like super straight line here. Like, of course, it's really straight in the environment, or in like the actual prop, so you can't really do much with that. But the camera can be used if brought a little bit closer to the TV, or the camera's brought down a little bit more, the rendering camera, to get that edge to break. Because like if this goes above that edge, now you have a straight edge, and then it drops, and then it goes back to this one. So it's just a matter of like kind of getting away from those elements. I'm gonna get my dog because he is just going to town on the door trying to get in here. I'll be right back. You can probably jump in. Don't forget to unmute.
No worries. Multitasking. I guess I'll share my screen. Oh, now one computer, so you will see double. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So for me, when I look at your work in terms of lighting, it's what I call flat. It means it's losing values, and it means it's very common for students and even beginners and a lot of professionals. Really, they have a tendency to add like God rays and fog because it's a lot of fun. The problem is when they use a lot of fog and God rays, it comes in front of your image and it flattens the values of your image. What I do like is you're trying to have a focal point. I think that's very interesting, and as all the points that Jeremiah obviously mentioned as well, we want to think about. But what I'm looking for more is to enhance some of the values and how light actually works. So we're talking about just pushing some of the details, making sure you have the highlights correctly, and you're kind of making sure that the focal point is there. Maybe in some cases, I will probably, in some cases, also start going a bit more brighter on the source, because it's a bit flat and the TV tends to be bright. If you remember looking at the TV in a dark room, it's not supposed to be the same value. It's supposed to be the brightest area. So don't be afraid to kind of see how bright you actually want it to be. But then you also need to balance it out with the rest of the environment, and kind of making sure the light's hitting correctly, making sure that there are bright areas, bright details, kind of looking at the spots, making sure that the shadows are correct, kind of hitting the right areas. And this requires you to understand lighting, of course, because you can't just use one light necessarily for this. In terms of this, I would also, in some cases, make sure that this one is a bit more brighter as well, because you don't want to have a uniform effect, basically, as I call it when I teach my students these things. I want to avoid the uniform effect. So I would kind of, maybe break it out a bit depending on the focal point. I'm guessing this is the focal point generally, but you also want to avoid the darkest areas. So you can see, you can see a very quick difference in that it's showing more reflectivity, it's showing more spectral effect, it's showing more areas. Obviously, the weakness that Jeremiah also mentioned is your construction of the scene doesn't help. So you have a different lighting, you have a different construction of your scene with tangents and the placement of things. You want to make sure you place things in a very interesting way that it kind of enhances your piece and focus on the focal point as well. There are obviously different things I would also continue to play with, which is just generally a color tone. So I will probably, play around with the cyan, which is eliminating your overly warm color to kind of get that more realistic but retro looks. I will probably try and play around with it because those screens back in the day had more of a blue light more than anything, so you could kind of get that feeling. So that's my quickest feedback for you. Again, as a reference, your my quick paint over, your my quick paint over, it has a different depth and feeling for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It's always fun to me if professionals give me feedback how quickly they improve my work. always grounds me a little if I get too full of myself and stuff.
It's very common. It's very
I tend
common
to do that.
like Yeah, it's very common.
I see one tutorial and think, yes, I got it now. I speak with one person. I didn't got shit, man.
You know, that doesn't go away ever.
I'm afraid it doesn't. Hasn't
yeah,
gone
no.
in the past 3 years, and I think it won't ever go away.
It never goes away. Like I can
You have
even
to
give,
revel in it.
Yeah, I mean, I can give Jeremiah my stuff, and even if he's not lighting artist, he's gonna pick up on stuff as well, you know. And I'll be like, "Fuck!" If Jeremiah was not the lighting artist, is picking up on that, damn suck.
It's another set of eyes, man.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, hopefully that's useful. Do you, Jeremiah? Do you want to jump on some of the other PCs as well?
I wanted to look at this one because this one's quite interesting. This chain here actually looks like, it almost looks like it's painted, but as we go down, is that painted or no?
So this project is pretty interesting. I just mentioned I learned Unreal recently.
Yeah.
So this was my project to learn to create stuff in Unreal. This is actually also a mix of my stuff and Quixel stuff, so the bridge stuff. And I played a lot with the materials, so blueprint and with the material blueprints and stuff. And I think I might have just messed up a little. But the moss is painted, actually. It's vertex painted. So I I created some moss shader and tried to make it look a little older. Or a little wore down.
Yeah, it's like aged and kind of like you're implying it's damp down here and the moss is just kind of starting to take over everything.
Yeah.
So the things that I wanted to highlight with this, so this shot's quite interesting. I think these being centered up, usually I try to throw them off to the side, like using the thirds and just kind of either putting it here or framing it in a way that it's just not centered up. This one's not necessarily bugging me, but usually I would say I try to avoid centering things. When I look at this shot, this is when I started going, oh, is this so what, is there anything in here that you built directly, or is this more like you were saying?
Environment lighting study. I tried to create, the focus was for me on building environments. So I wanted to build something that could also be a level in a game or something. That's why I have a little walkthrough in the end.
Yeah, that video is cool.
And also to play around with everything in Unreal, like materials, nanite, lighting and stuff, because I used to work with Maya only, and Unreal was like a life changer for me because I can see lighting change in real time and fog doesn't render like an hour. Jesus.
Yeah. Okay. So when I look at this scene, then I'll highlight some of the more technical things. So with these being coming in from other sources, like if you're not building them, you bring them in from like Polyhaven or Quixel, making sure that there's surface information that's more micro for the lighting to kind of play with. It's like another way to affect your roughness information. So the roughness value may be correct, but if there's no like micro detail on the surface to imply the surface accurately, then the roughness, the overall image feels strange. So it might be really mild here, and maybe it's just the compression or like the depth of field. Maybe this is a little blurred. I would definitely look into detail normals and adding those types of like surface information that you can tile at a high rate in order to get to get that information there. And it can be a lot of people are like, okay, I use detail normals and I tile it a lot and it looks all right. Just keep it in mind that you can use a mask to control the strength of detail normals, as well as like the concept that detail normals should be on everything. They help imply so much information. Unless it's like an extremely smooth surface, then that smooth surface is going to have like scratches in the roughness to show information. When it comes to this type of shader that you're working on here, I would try and in the shader build a clamp to try and tighten up the transition between the type of mossy material and the wood. That way it doesn't look so soft. Usually it's going to transition a lot harsher. And then I wouldn't I want to play this video. This video is quite interesting. I would say the thing that bugs me when I watch this video is how low the ceiling is all the time. Like having it go up and down would be nice. And then the lantern being so far away from you is very disjointed feeling, right? If it usually you would feel it like right here, like it'd be quite close, and you'd know it would imply itself that you're carrying a lantern. And then these slow turns really like emphasize how intense the motion blur is. It's like being able to either turn quickly or like toning down the motion blur and speeding up your turns as well. Man, I feel really uncomfortable at this dead end.
That was the goal.
Yeah.
It's kind of a horror scenario.
Yeah. I'm glad like you do a turnaround. If you start doing a turnaround and there's just a silhouette there, you're now adding story, which is even better.
True, that would have been a fun idea.
That's me on this one.
Yeah. Okay. For me, I won't spend too much time on, but I'll share my screen as well on this one, because I'm quite visual when I give feedback, because I don't have the necessary vocabulary to explain things anyway. So for me, when I look at this kind of presentation, and this is very common, is it's kind of bright there, but there's no understanding of, unless I watch the video, but still there's no logical or creative reason for why this one is so bright and everything else is dark. So I would always try and make sure that you kind of give a reason. Is this perfect? No, technically should be on the left side because your specular effect is coming from the left side. So really I should have done the other side very quickly. But either way, you want to make sure that there's a reason to understand that there's light coming into the environment. It's brightening up. Obviously, I've done some changes with the color tone as well to kind of balance things out. So why do I do that when I do lighting? So when I do scenes and when I give feedback of scenes, unless there's a good reason, a story reason, or emotional reason, when the scenes are dark, such as caves, and there's a lot of brown, there's a lot of dark tones, I actually throw in a different color, like a blue, green, something to kind of cool down the image and give that separation in the image that's lacking when you have all the colors. Because when the light bounces around and you have the lighting you have chosen, you end up with a very flat image. So also your color, it's not white, this kind of, at that present time, that's supposed to be quite warmer, and you wouldn't necessarily get that kind of, we call white clipping, at least for lighting artists. I think it's the same for any artist that uses this term, white clipping. And then there's black clipping. White clipping is when it gets to the point you're losing texture detail. You can see it's very hot. And lanterns at that time is warm, and it's not necessarily that hot, and it doesn't necessarily spread on this level, right? It doesn't make sense to me why it's bright below the table, for example. Where's this light coming from? Where's this light coming from? It looks like there's no shadow casting maybe you have on. So, and there's spectral effects on this very glossy metal, I'm assuming. So these are the details I pay attention to. I even look at the specs on the darkness here, and I go, okay, there's something that doesn't fit what you're doing. So the color of the lantern and the intensity and the range is definitely something to think about. I think those are the key things that I noticed that I would work a little bit on. The other things such as the flickering light and these things as well. But I think this one takes too much of the focal point. So when Jeremiah and me as well, when I talk about focal point, it's, you don't want the brightest point to take the attention away from what you want to show. You want to show this, but you're having a competing attention between the object, compositionally wise, rule of third, looks great, you have the basics in place, but because this is bright, I'm also looking at this one. So that's why this is very important to get right. So you have a decent level of exposure on this light, and it's covering the right direction and the right color, and then you have the light there. So if that's difficult, and it is difficult for a lot of people who are not learning from a lighting artist, you could just use a very diffuse omni light or a point light just to get the light correct, and then you could use a spotlight instead to kind of control your lighting for this kind of gameplay, even cutscenes. So you would have that light there and kind of control the range a little bit, and you would have 4 of them instead. Because a point light that you are not casting shadow, that's good, but if it was casting 100% shadow, that's very expensive, right? That's 6 spotlights. So normally we will use a non-shadow light, and we will control it, kind of like we were trying to do, and then we would use a cheap spotlight to kind of focal point the area, so it kind of brightens the image a bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely makes sense. That one was a tough piece for me because I got a little lost in it. I wanted to do everything perfectly, but it was actually only a learning experience. So I don't know, especially in the end, I got a little too involved when I should have dropped the project maybe or just finished it. So I see where I missed some stuff because I was a little tunneled in the end. I didn't see the things that I maybe would see now with a little distance.
I think you should be happy that you're doing something and you're producing something. I don't think it matters at the end of the day. Many people try something and never finish. So, give you a clap yourself at the back for giving it a shot. I think that's very important to acknowledge here.
Yeah, definitely. Making sure you post at the end is important. Oh yeah, I wanted to show this really quickly because I think we can jump to the next portfolio. But when you look at this image, you were talking about levels and like your like super hot spot and then super dark points. I made this level checker thing, which basically just blasts a color in a range. And it just basically what I try and do is color the white points and then the black points. So when you have a image where it becomes quite dark, and this is just a rough estimation, of course, right? But it's like when it becomes quite dark, just know that that's information that in post you can't move around. So like if I do a levels on your image to try and bring those dark areas up, you can see like there's pixelation in here, and that's literally like 2 bits of data or maybe 3 of information that we can get out of those shadows. So making sure that you're properly exposing everything while also figuring out where your focal points are at. This can also help you with focal points as well, as you can see where like the highlights or the hot spots are at. And it's the same with, so you want to avoid the black, but you also want to avoid like full white pixels. Those are where it's just basically blowing out. Just wanted to highlight those.
Very things. Cool, definitely. And this is more important. I mean, there's always place for breaking the rules, but you only do it when you're experienced, but also you have to understand the context. In a game context, you want to have some visibility, right? And it's very common in horror games, and I always commented with horror games. For some reason, people think you need to make everything dark, black. You don't need to. If you understand color and range and values, you can make it pretty bright and scary game. It's just you don't need to make it pitch black, like you don't see anything. In Isolation being one of my favorite games, it doesn't necessarily go pitch black in the game at all, but it just used light and color and sound so well that it just works. And that's a reference I like to use a lot. So yeah, are you having questions?
Yeah. So it's like, how do you do this for checking exposure? So I'm just adding a gradient map on top of the image, and then I'm remapping the gradients kind of like you would in Substance Designer, and just applying the colors where I want them. So if you really want to get just the clipping points, you can control like where that happens. And then I just save it as like an action script.
Yep.
So I just record it happening.
And if you want to learn how to do it, maybe you will. Maybe there will be a tutorial in the coming weeks showing you how to do it in detail. Who knows? But yeah. Anything else you want to go through, Jeremiah, for Marvin, or are we good?
I think we're all right. Because I was looking at the rest of the portfolio. I need to like fix my screen sharing. But I think the other scene, let me double check it really fast here. Yeah, the other one was just the prop challenge, and I think that's more of just like, it's cool that you did the challenge. Let me window. There we go. But yeah, there's not too much to add here other than like making sure that oh, Amit's got to share the screen. So I'll wait for a second. Yeah, no worries. Making sure that the information that you're adding on the surface is usually it's more in the roughness and not so much in the normal maps, because normal map, like surface changes that happen in normal maps are going to be implying very heavy information or heavy things happening to the surface. Whereas like instead of like these dips that are in there, you could be adding those in the roughness, and then this seam could be in the normal, just to explain how the I guess plastic was molded. But yeah, and then just watching out for sharp edges. Doing hard surface is painful. I'm not good at hard surface. I cheat and just go to ZBrush with it. But
yeah, hard surface is also something I struggle with. But I thought this was, especially material-wise, was one of my better assets, so I decided to post it. It's kind of hit or miss for me because I'm still didn't click just yet. I saw this roughness normal thing in a video, so where you put roughness also a little normal couldn't hurt sometimes, just to insinuate like I don't know, some leftovers from mud or something like this. Yeah, but maybe I overdid it a little. Just didn't click just yet. I have to put a bit more practice in.
Yeah, no worries.
I think with this plastic, you just need like the roughness feels okay. It might need subsurface for this type of material.
And also your lighting, you want to avoid that black core shadow you have on the middle of your barrel.
Sure.
Because you can see two of your light sources and then there's a split. So you want to have the bright spot on one side and then just fade it into dark. It's going to be a better presentation.
Yeah, you want to move that basically to over here. Yeah. Unless you want a rim light to.
Yeah. So that's about it. Hopefully that's useful, Marvin.
It was definitely. Thanks a lot, guys.
No problem.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for showing up, and hopefully we see you around. And just gonna kick you out now. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
So I don't think we can get through everything. We will try as best as we can to be quicker. I think for the next one, I will do Jeremiah, but I think for Jeremiah, we can focus more on the presentation of his portfolio because he literally has hundreds of stuff in there. So I think what we can kind of think about is
let's see here.
I was just kidding, it doesn't have 100 stuff.
This is Jeremiah that we're looking at? No, who we?
Yeah, Jeremiah, yeah. It should be 3 stuff from level 80 or something.
Yes. Oh yeah, I remember this scene. Yeah, so I sense sarcasm in the because there's tons of stuff in here.
No,
I was fully expecting a ton of like a portfolio of like hundreds.
So what happened? So what happened? The link I got from him or that I clicked was on the likes tab.
Oh.
So I was looking at like 684 things. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how many stuff have you been busy working? And then I'm like, oh,
busy
shit,
boy.
It's the wrong tab.
Wow, there's like really broad range of stuff.
Yeah, wow.
So just looking at the portfolio, environment artist, cool. I like that the article is on the tail end. I usually like to see the articles on like the end of a portfolio because, I mean, articles are cool and they help you if you're trying to get like visas and work in specific countries. But for your portfolio, we're here to like look at your art, right? So I think it's great that as more stuff shows up in here, that the articles are on the tail end. Let's dig in here. So right off the bat, this is a very detailed scene. Oh, nice. It loops pretty nicely. So I can just sit here and stare at it. The first thing that stuck out to me was that the leaves are falling about halfway through the videos when they start to fall in. And they don't look, let me see if they didn't look like are they rotating? I can't tell if they're, yeah, they're moving a little bit.
Let's see. Jeremiah, do you have a microphone?
Do I have a microphone?
Jeremiah. I mean, sorry, his name is Jeremiah, so it's almost the same pronunciation.
I mean, I think it's actually pronounced Jeremiah as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
Hello?
yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
hello. What's up?
We are helping you.
Oh, thank you.
You're like, oh, how's it going? Yeah, well, what's up? Good to
Yeah,
good
like
to
the leaves. I
voice
made
meet
the
you.
leaves like in a reel, but they were very bad. Like it was like a last minute thing. Very bad leaves.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily the quality of the leaves,
But the motion is bad, right?
The motion could be better. It would feel more natural, but the fact that like it comes in halfway through, you basically you need, because this is in Unreal, so what you need is that buffer frame. There's like a buffer window that you can add where all of the particles start firing off and everything is doing its thing, and they're already falling, and then it starts to film or record what you were planning to show. So it basically gives you a bit of time for, because like from this point I should already see the leaves falling, like some down here, because it feels like time was frozen until we started. So that's the first thing I picked up on. The next thing is so the water is quite central, and then the detail around the water feels off to me. Like it feels strange. So when you have like a stream, for example, like usually a stream tends to wind, or like when we do 3D art and stylized work, or just digital art in general, we like to weave or like go left to right with the water and just kind of lead the eye with it. So right now it's quite central, and then you also have like a lot of stuff around it that makes it hard to register that there is water there. Like I see the water when it's moving, but the nature of like what's near water, like it should be like if you look at references, you can see a transition where it transitions into water. Like it's not just grass and then all of a sudden water, unless it's like an overhang. There's usually a bit of dirt or mud that you'll see as you transition into the water.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. I think some of the other stuff is like, I remember critiquing this a little bit.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And
like the foreground.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Like I remember you told me about there was missing like a layer in the foreground. And then you told me, you could add trees and stuff. Yeah,
so getting these into the shot I think helps. They're quite dark. Yeah. Like I think we'll talk a little bit about that, but the core of it is quite dark. Man, I'm learning things from you now. Now I'm talking about cores. What's happening? And yeah, I think if that was filled in a little bit more with some light, and then you were blurring these out, I think you would shift the focus, because now you have the layers, but everything's quite compacted into itself still.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when you go into detail lighting. This is another thing I really like, is when you see detail lighting, it really helps you understand the material attributes that are being displayed on the assets. So like this is substantially darker than this, and this one actually reads a little bit easier. So it makes me think that some of the surfaces, the materials are maybe too dark.
Yeah.
So you end up losing a lot of the readability of the scene.
Yeah, makes sense.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, I suppose it's a very difficult piece to give feedback, because there's a lot of things to pass on. I'll try and share my screen. It's very difficult to paint over on a scene like this too. So I'm not sure if I can actually explain everything. But he is correct in the sense that, first of all, you cannot, in any circumstance, have, unless you are an art director and you choose to do it, you can give me a good argument for doing it. To have this being brighter than the sunlight, right? But during sunset, it's very contrasted. This is a sunset scene, so you can't suddenly have a brighter shadow than the actual sunlight, right? The sunlight is normally the bright spot, and even during sunset you have warmer or bluer color. Now this is pretty white, even though you might have had the color, it's quite white in the color tone, and then you have a sunset. But normally when you do go for sunset scenes, you want to make sure you have a nice color palette. And for me, this is my personal observation also at this case, is for me the colors are off. There's a white light, then in the front you have a kind of a warm, around, it looks like it's about 4,000 Kelvin temperature. You didn't go all the way down to 3,500, which is more orange, and because of that, when you choose a brighter color, meaning you go towards the blue scale, which is 6,500 and up, it becomes more white because of the choices of your color. So this is your focal point now. But the fact that you have this bright light on the right side here, for example, is very bright, and then you have blue here, but this one looks a bit more white for some reason. You have a hot spot here, but the light's coming over. For me, the composition for the lighting in your color doesn't feel right, and you can see that when you look at this image as well, and you have an opportunity to review it. And how do I get rid of this? And I put in this one. Or is that this one? Okay, I'll just do that. So here you can see there's a lot of information going on here, and generally when you have a piece like this and it's sunset, you want to kind of dim down the details a little bit and have a nice, you can see even in your curves, you're not really going too much, and it's very nice and balanced, which can be pretty good. So if I kind of brighten up, you can see that the whole scene is kind of blowing out. That shouldn't happen. It's one spot or the other spot that should be blowing up because of the way you use values, okay? So you would darken the scene a bit more, but still keep this bright, okay? You will still have a blue light covering up this. So I think that's one of the challenges with this one. So I think, let's see, go here. So I would kind of make sure that you are kind of playing around with this focal value, color a bit, make sure that this is the focal point, but play around with the colors and the highlights. I personally wouldn't do this, because now the focal point is the ground. Okay.
Yeah.
This is how your piece looks like now. And if I do it darker, you can see there's a conflict, and the darker I go, you have this white bluish light and you have this orange light. I personally wouldn't recommend doing this kind of things. I would maybe make the kind of the fog a bit more blue, dim down this one a little bit, and make sure that this one looks better. Okay, so that's what I would do. I would switch the focus, balance the color a little bit, and then you're closer to how it would look like when there's fog, it's sunset, and the light is scattering around the fog area. So I think it's a good piece overall, but I think definitely there could be a lot of improvements if you switch around the colors a little bit, understand how sunset works, the fact that it's hitting here and everything, these rim lights. Obviously, I'm a lighting artist, so I'm very picky when it comes to this. And I don't know if I actually have any good pieces from my work that is actually sunset. I suppose this was dusk scene I was doing. And inside I can't try and keep it contrasty, but it's kind of in the morning. I suppose this one is kind of works. I'm trying to make sure it's not too obvious, and I try and having a very orange, very warm light. You can see there's still blue light coming into the shadows. I'm not eliminating the fact that the blue light still exists in the sky, even if it's
for sure
kind of dramatic in this case. And even my real photography in the background, you can see this is from Morocco. I just was there, and this is sunset during Morocco, and you can see the blue light hitting the shadows, the cat in the middle, in the focal point. It's all there, and I think that's very important when you do this kind of lighting. You really need to understand the different time of day, how it works, the angle of the light. These are all quite important, I think, as well. I think what you do pretty well is you have a general good idea of, you know, the general mood you want, but a lot of people, they struggle getting the colors. Like the color alone can change your piece, for me anyway. This is just dimming down your sunset a little bit and letting your fog and skylight kind of brighten the sky a little bit, and taking away the white color that is existing, because in real life you don't get white unless you have all the three colors. But when the sunlight goes down, you have orange for a reason, because there's no longer white light.
Okay.
It's all the RGB colors, all the different colors and additive is what makes white in lighting. Okay, additive color palette in lighting, not in Photoshop, but in lighting. These are the three colors that makes it makes the like color white. So when you don't have all the colors anymore, which is the daylight, which is white, it's because there's an imbalance of color. So when the sunset happens, you have more of the warm color. You know, it's a very complicated topic, but you want to respect that, because as photographers, cinematographers, lighting artists, and even normal people, they will look at it and go, okay, something just seems off. Personally, I think this looks a bit cleaner.
Yeah, I like this one better as well.
So that's just my art direction, really. So you can take it the way you want it, but that's how I would have done it. So yeah. What do you say, Jeremiah? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I like the way I didn't even think about, giving the fog a color, like a tint. I think it works way better when the fog is a bit bluish. Because the way I did it, I remember I had like the general, like all of the lights were like warm, except for some lights on the arc. They were like cold. Like you said, there was like a bluish light on the arc, because I made that one cold. I don't know. I guess I was trying to do some conscious stuff. I didn't really know what I was doing, I guess.
I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm just don't worry.
Yeah, but I get it. Yeah, makes way more sense now.
I'm happy it's useful. Dynasty, you have anything else? Just because both of you, Jeremiah, she's referring.
Oh, you're about to mute me?
Yeah, no. Do you want to anything else you want to add, Dynasty?
On that last piece, I think you're pretty spot on with like adding the color to the fog, and like just making sure that the temperature as well as the amount of brightness coming in and then the brightness coming out. I didn't even realize, like it kind of feels like, because of that, it feels like a set. Like it's not being affected by natural lighting. It's being affected by like a set lighting setup, like you're on a set of a film or something.
Nice.
So yeah, adding color to your fog or your atmosphere is like exactly what is happening in real life, right? If it's not direct sunlight hitting the fog or the atmosphere, it's just the atmosphere color itself, which is this blue. Yeah, I'm no lighting artist, so I don't.
Well, for the record, when I'm doing this, I'm like, oh yeah, fuck, it worked. It looks better. Oh yeah, it's good.
So yeah. I forget what the term is called, but as highlights go back in distance, the atmosphere isn't able to block out those photons from reaching your eye. But in shadows, the shadows become more the color of the atmosphere. So like whenever you see shadows at a distance, they should just be more of the color of the atmosphere. I forget what that. Do you know what that term's called?
I mean, I normally call it fog scattering effect, but one thing you also have to remember with the fog, which I don't want to say because I don't want you to misuse it for your image if you do update it, is when the light hits the fog, it diffuses and it bounces more. So the minute you have fog, it doesn't just really show the direction of the fog. It's gonna go into the woods, and it's gonna brighten up your scene a bit more in real life anyway. That's why you see a lot of concept artists. If you ever pay attention on ArtStation, when they're doing underwater cave or caves or anything, they add a lot of fog because they know and understand that the fog is used to excuse that there's more light coming into the darker areas to spread the light. And that is the problem with Unreal as well. When people are using Unreal, it does it too much, and it ruins the piece actually more than anything, because people just leave it and it's like all over the screen. So that's the problem, I think.
I wanted to look at the other scene.
Have a
Because I
go.
don't know how much time we have.
I mean, I'm keeping going as long as I can, and as long
Yeah.
as you can.
I can probably do. Do we have another portfolio?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, there's quite a few, and we gotta have to say stop eventually because the longer the stream goes, the more people jumps on and gonna add more further. So there comes the point where we just have to stop and they have to come back another time.
I can do one more after this one,
okay.
And then I can let you carry it for me. You know enough environment art now, so you'll be fine.
Educated.
So this scene I thought was really cool. There's a lot of storytelling and compositionally, it's really interesting. There's a lot of clipping happening where you have like really dark areas.
Yeah.
And maybe the bright areas aren't clipping as much, but there's a ton of contrast happening. And I think that's also what's causing the clipping in those darker areas. Like if oh man, I need to stop sharing and then share again. This is weird.
I mean, you can just tell me and I can remove it when you do something and I can add it back.
Oh, it's all good. I'm just getting Photoshop up so I can.
I like how you're getting into Photoshop.
I mean, you started doing it. I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that. Yeah, so I'll just run that thingy again. Need to do it above it though. Yeah, so you can see like where it's. Oh man, this is probably killing everyone's eyes right now. You can see like there's basically nearly zero information in those really dark areas, but the ivy. If we turn this off, you've got a lot of contrast between all of the little leaves. Like just all of this just turns into noise. Let me grab the other image, which is the detail lighting. It's just going to paste. No. I think I have a RAM problem. I copy an image and then I have to wait for ages for it to paste. No, this is not happening.
It is happening, my friend. It is happening.
Oh, yeah. No, we're not getting a... There we go. Okay.
Oh, okay, nice.
Cool. I'm not crazy. So it's a little offset. But let's just correct that really quick. And so if we look at this, we get a close enough alignment. So when you have the detail lighting only, there's still noise here, but the contrast is not nearly as harsh. I'm wondering if like maybe the subsurface on the leaves needs to be more extreme or just dialed in. So that way those shadows just... Maybe it's just how you're crunching it down as well, because like, we lose this shape here. Like this is just part of it. Just blends into the rest of the scene. I'm just gonna like copy and paste this thing. Getting that to pop out could be nice. I don't know if it's like maybe it needs to pop out more in like a midway. But yeah, it's just really contrasty. And there's a whole lot of information happening everywhere. So the contrast is just making everything really busy. But I like the environment and I like the idea behind what's happening. Compositionally, everything is fine.
Okay.
Bringing that tree forward helped a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm curious how we get away from the noise.
Yeah, but I feel like also when I was making the renders for this one, maybe because there's so much stuff in the screenshot, then I couldn't really get high resolution. Like if you zoom in, if you zoom in like maybe 50%, it's already like blurry. I don't know. Even though I try, to do the sharpening, everything, but still maybe because there's so much stuff in the render, then I don't know. I couldn't get the high resolution. I
mean, it might be temporal anti-aliasing that's kind of melting everything. You could disable that and then render it like 4K and then down res it to like a 1080 or 1440.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then you'll get the sharp image, but then you'll also get the softening and the automatic aliasing from downsampling the image. So if you can render at 8K and then bring it down to 4, and you'll have a nice 4K render.
Okay, nice. I'll keep it in mind for the future.
Wondering if I can. Do you have anything you'd want to add to this one?
Probably. I'll just do a quick one. It's not good stuff because I'm trying to be very quick at this stage. But I guess for what you're doing something on your Photoshop, I'll do a quick search.
Yeah, don't mind me.
So for me, I think Jeremiah is definitely spot on. So for me, it's very dark. You have some light coming in. You want to again have balance of two colors normally. You don't just want the orange and then orange black. Of course, light bounces around. It's quite bright, so you want to make sure it bounces around. So for me, I would do more towards this direction. Probably balance it out a little bit more. Not have too bright, to be honest. But you want to make sure you kind of don't do it too much. Obviously, maybe make this one a little brighter. Kind of maybe dim it down a little bit, but kind of make sure the focal point is happening. The disadvantage of this kind of method of lighting is you're also lighting the whole wall on the way down, and it's hitting this area, and then that doesn't necessarily always be a wanted effect. Second of all, it's not a big deal, but technically when you have this contrast in and you're inside, realistically speaking, I'm not saying you should do it, but just for learning purposes at this stage. In reality, this would actually start being quite white actually, because there's a contrast going on. You have the inside the camera doesn't really cover both areas, because you can either pick the brightest spot or the darkest spot, which is how also Unreal works. Which is why when you see people doing Unreal, it respects the concept of camera, which is why you'll see, why is it so bright outside and dark inside, or why is it having challenges. But yeah, generally don't be afraid to brighten this up if you want to. I personally don't mind it, but the problem is it gets a bit flat. So you might want to make it brighter. That has something to do with exposure, AV100, and other stuff that you can work on. But generally, it's really about balancing the image. Maybe making this warmer. I would probably make this a bit warmer, so the blue color stays within the shadow and these kind of things. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Great tips. Yeah.
Yeah. No problem. Mr. Dynasty, you good?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you if you do you ever play with the filter for Camera Raw
in Photoshop? Yeah, no, really.
Yeah,
maybe I should,
because I usually do that to not for like the final image, but to illustrate these types of these things, because like you can change the temperature of the image overall, and then if I just like put a mask on top of it and invert it, then you can go into your shadows and just paint the blue in and get an idea of like what it could look like if things that are in shadow were more blue, and then you can just lower the opacity just to get a feel for like what that could look like. Oh, nice. What that could look like if you adapt a more blue tone to your shadows, because you can see the difference in the.
Cool.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I'll have to learn your method of doing this, Jeremiah, because this is different than it's the same end goal, but your method seems to be quicker than mine. So we gotta have a sit down and that's show me so I can use it on my other students as well. So cool, Mr. Merzari. Hopefully that's useful feedback.
Yeah, for sure. It was nice talking to you guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it's good talking to you.
Thank you for tuning in. Have a nice time, nice life. I'm about to click kick on you.
Okay,
you
too. Have fun. Bye-bye.
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 All right.
Please, no.
He's like panicking. No, I want more. You got time for some more?
Yeah, I can do one more portfolio, I think.
Let's try and do at least one more and see if you still have time afterwards. Here's the next one.
Here. Oh yes. Okay. Oh man, this one's all lighting. Let me
So I'm not gonna help you here or give any input. This is all you. And then and then we can do the next one as well, so you can speed through everything before you go.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So I mean, this is all lighting, so I'm curious, lighting and color grading artists. So when I go through these, I guess my curiosity is immediately like, how much of this was made by the person? And of course, I'm assuming a lot of it is going to be mega scans and marketplace because the focus is lighting and color grading. I am extremely poor in color grading. I have no idea what I'm doing when I'm doing in that territory, but it's something I started to actually just recently dig into. I think just scrolling through these overall, like just the few environments that we're looking at. Ooh, this one's kind of cool. This is nice. Let me go back to this one. Yeah, you want to say something?
No. I'll see. I'll just follow you as you scroll and let you go first. And then
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to stay out of this.
Yeah. So what I want to comment on is mainly composition stuff. So compositionally, like this one's quite strong. Like I really like this scene. I think of the sky being, I don't know. There's not anything interesting up there, and maybe that's a good thing because maybe we should be focusing on this. But framing wise, these are all quite good. This one is the one that stuck out to me just because you've got a clip here. This is one of those tangents again where it's like, oh, if you look up just a little bit higher, bring the camera physically down, but then tilt it up, you'll break that problem. Let me just scroll through here. So a lot of these are aesthetically pleasing, and framing wise, they're quite nice. When I'm just realizing the resolution difference on here. So making sure that you've got consistency in your resolution when you scale props. So if you're using a lot of props that are existing from other packages, it's really important to try to not scale them too much. I usually err on the side of don't go above or below 20%. Because what you want to be thinking about is the consistency of the resolution from object to object. Like I can see this, I can see the pixels in the texture. And then this bridge looks quite low res as well. There's certain, it's one of those rules that I don't think anyone really talks about. It's the main reason that texel density exists, is to try and maintain a consistent resolution across the board. So if everything was the same resolution as this bridge, you wouldn't call it out because it's all consistent, right? But it's something to keep in mind. It was because of texture streaming in Engine. Oh, interesting. That makes me think there's too many textures loading. I would have to see like what's happening in the background to know that.
If you have too much texture streaming, there's a command you can use. I think is r dot texture pool. You just increase the texture. You just increase the number in the command line, and it will fix the issue. But just message me. I'll give you the command.
Oh, interesting. So you basically expand the pool at which textures can like load into memory.
Yeah.
Is that artificially capped in UE5?
Yeah. Even UE4, this is the same problem. All my students have this buggy thing, so I have to make a video specific to explain. It's not a problem. You just need to expand it because everyone has the memory, but technically, if you just expand it, you should be able to do it. But also, if people are using, the what's this called? There's a slider. People it's normally on 100, but people tend to do 200 to make the image sharper in Unreal.
Oh yeah, your resolution scaling.
Yeah, and that will also, cost a bit of resources when you do that. So
you can use the render queue.
That's much better.
Because you can put the command in there. So at render, it'll fire the command. And then when you're not rendering, it'll just be what it is. Because I assume turning that up is probably pretty heavy.
Yeah, it shouldn't be any problem when you're using texture streaming, to be honest. It should be perfectly fine to use it to enhance your work without these problems. I haven't had any problems yet. You can have 16 gigabyte, 8 gigabyte, as long as you don't go crazy, obviously. Should be good.
Yeah, I've seen the same resolution issues in some of the areas here. I feel like this is scale. I don't think this is... Like I want to say that's scaling, but the thing I'll call out here is that fire is super red. Maybe you're going for a style approach, but I'm just watching you sip your coffee as I comment on lighting. Oh, this one's cool. Oh, this has a nice vibe to it. Roll through here. So when you do graffiti, remember that someone had to do it, even if it's not real. Think about like, how did that person get up there, and how did they consistently like tilt sideways so cleanly? Usually there's a curve or an arc because of how our body works with when we graffiti. Someone that's really good at tagging will be able to control that arc because they know how to position themselves. So you can actually imply how crappy a graffiti artist is by the way you draw their graffiti. So just think about like most graffiti is going to happen at like eye level, and if someone's being cheeky, it's nice and low, or cheeky nice and high. And like, how the hell did they do that? They must have brought a ladder, or a friend is lifting them up. Just a detail to think about. Man, there's some crazy stuff in here. Yeah, see, this is like that would require a very serious airbrush. Like, I don't know what head you would need to put on a spray can to pull that off. And drips in the decals make it really difficult to rotate them around. So like you want dynamic drips in your, so like no matter which way you rotate it, it's always pointing down. Yeah, this one's pretty cool. I like this one. I'm just gonna, oh, nice. Yeah, and then playing with like different, oh, that's cool. It's got there's something weird with the amount of glow above. Like you feel like it should be clipping here, but I like the intention with that. So there's a lot of this gas station. Let me go back to the portfolio really fast. There's a lot of that gas station. I just want to comment on the making sure to like maybe not pad the portfolio. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but like those could all be part of the same post, right? You don't want to click through it too much, because I think what people will do is they'll go to the first one and they'll just they'll scroll through. Oh yes, Martin scene. Yeah, dude, this guy's crazy. They'll look at like this post and they'll be like, cool, and then they'll go to the next one and like, yeah. If they see enough things they like, they'll stop. But if they're questioning, they'll continue forward because they're still curious. And if you get to a point where, this is kind of like how I perceive how people view portfolios. If they get to the gas station and you keep giving them the gas station, but with different lighting scenarios, they may just like, they may stop here. And if there's something that's better that is behind it, maybe they'll never get to it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I feel like I'm rambling now. Do you want to jump in here, Amit?
Sure, if you want me to jump in, that's not a problem. I think I'm not going to go through everything because there's a lot of work here, but I think generally speaking, the sky tends to be the brightest point. I think is one of the things I noticed. So, for example, if I do a quick share screen, I suppose I could do that. Let me just check. I'm not accidentally showing the other stuff going on. Okay. So it's very basic things like, this is your image. It's very flat. So every time I say flat, it's about values and contrast. So I would do this, you know, I would be brightening up your focal point, making sure it's bright, the sky is brightening up, making things a bit darker, right? there's a huge difference in how you feel like it's alive. You feel it's daytime. You're feeling, okay, this is Genshin Impact. This is Tower Fantasy type of logic, I suppose. But it's really just how lighting is. You want to make sure this is the bright area, and then from there you deal with everything. You do not want to have this kind of level of feedback naturally, of visual things. You know, it's doesn't necessarily have the punch, but you do this, you have a punch. Okay, it's you're starting to get this gradient you kind of need in every image. So I think that's the general notice I notice in your portfolio is just the value needs to be there. You know, it goes either dark or bright, and a lot of people when they do lighting struggle a little bit with getting that balance quite right. And when I look at the other pieces, it's really the same principles, the range of the light. Sometimes it's about material because you're trusting the asset pack too much. When I do my mentorship and then the courses, we train the lighting artists to understand that you have to edit the material. Sometimes you can't trust everything, and it's the same with your other pieces that we share the screen, I suppose, just to give you a more visual feedback very quickly. It's the same with these pieces. You know, it's flat because it doesn't have a punch line. Your brightest spot is your eye, which isn't necessarily possible even in real life. If you take a torchlight during daytime, it's going to get dimmer during, almost invisible during daytime. And the darker and darker it gets, the more brighter it will get. So if you're going to have something like this, I will obviously also make sure it hits the nose and a little bit of air and has some effect to it. But you can see there's the same thing here as well. It's kind of dim in comparison to everything else. So these kind of balances, I think, is a bit important. Punch the light a bit. You know, don't be afraid to kind of enhance things a little bit. People are very afraid of real light. What I do think you did pretty good here, I think, which is your latest piece. More or less, is you're showing you're comfortable with the hotspots. Meaning it's not white clipping, but you're comfortable pushing it. But then the balance is making sure it bounces around a little bit more, getting the colors right, perspective right. Because now you have a leading line going down, you have a leading line going this way, you know, choice of camera. These things also play a very huge importance as a lighting and color grading artist. We still need to focus on these part as well to kind of enhance our presentation. And then you have to pay attention to foliages. They are very annoying, especially in Unreal 4 and 5. Generally, you know, you have this highlight and sometimes it doesn't work well, so you want to turn it off if needed to kind of replicate real life a little bit. Because a lot of foliages have too much it's a diffusion, it's called, what's it called, subsurface scattering. A lot of people have too much of it, and that's not how you know, this is not how it will work. This is two things. It's a shadow, probably you downloaded the asset maybe, or you used the foliage, and the problem is it has a shadow off often or detailed shadow off, so you need to go in and you need to turn it on, because this is not possible even in real life. You have to see the shots, the shadows, and because you're doing a piece anyway, you can afford the frame drop for your presentation anyway. Same thing over here. I like that you have a light coming over, but again, you have to understand, and I'm not going to go into detail, but where actually fog exists and how fog actually works in real life is very important when you use this. And again, when you use fog like this, it's a good idea, but remember, the minute you put fog like this, you lose the depth of field, okay? Because you're putting it in front of the opening. So you're losing that contrast, the depth of field that exists because of the fog. And remember, when you use fog, it desaturates your color. So normally when I use fog, I have to cheat a little bit because of artistic reason. I want to enhance the color back that I lose when it's very foggy. You also have a tendency to use very unnatural red color or orange color. So there's something I would look into temperature, color temperature, just search for it and you'll get a bit more accurate color palette that's believable when it comes to your blue and white colors. Overall, you're not a terrible lighting and color grading artist at all, so don't worry about that. but there's obviously a lot more to work on. I like a lot of your stuff, but it's stuff like this that I like to focus on. I like thinking a little bit about where you put the light. Where's the shadow? What are you highlighting? What's the focal point? What's the story? Unfortunately, it all pays a little bit of impact as a lighting and color grading artist. I'm trying to be very quick because I'm hoping to go through all the pieces. You're very creative, I can see, but again, if you have fog here, you need to have, and you have a fog behind. That's not how fog works. It's not either front or back. It's either in the back and then you have a little bit in the front. You can't have fog in the middle of nowhere and then there's no fog anywhere else. You also want to have a point light here so it fills in the rest of the area. There's quite a few things, but again, I'm happy to help specifically lighting artists in our channel. And this, again, you can see the fog here. You can see there's a spotlight. You didn't widen the angle, and you didn't do the inner angle sharp. You didn't do the outer angle sharp. So these are the things you need to pay attention to if your main income is going to be lighting anyway. Especially if you will send this to me as a job search, for example. These are the things I would pay attention to because it tells me if you understand light. It tells me if you understand color palette. It tells me if you understand how fog works. Because it takes a lot of your image loses depth when you do too much fog. So that's a general comment I have with most lighting artists. Stop using so much fog. It's cool, but it can ruin your image if you don't do it correctly, unfortunately. So
oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish.
No, go on.
I was just gonna mention I couldn't tell if you were using IES profiles on your lights.
So he was using, I think, in some it looked like he was using them.
Yeah.
He says yes as well, or he or she. I don't know
okay.
if it's she or he actually. I didn't notice the name properly, but it uses IES profile. But again, you need to set up that correctly as well. Again, exposure in EV. I cover that a lot in my mentorship as well. This is basic fundamental things I notice when you do this kind of lighting. But overall, I see you have a huge potential. Keep going. I really like the way you're doing creative color palette. I used to do that a lot as well when I started out, and then eventually I need to calm down a little bit and kind of understand the basics and do the fundamental stuff a bit correctly to persuade people that, hey, I know what I'm doing. And then I went back to this extreme color that you are doing now in some of my pieces. You see, I'm doing the same stuff now that I stopped doing a while back. And I think there's a lot of I can see there's a lot of fun with the way you do your lighting and a color palette. For example, before Jeremiah has to go. So I do the same thing as well, but again, I am doing it. I'm paying more attention to the color. I'm making sure that the light is in fact small. When you have this kind of cone, you can see there's an inner outer and inner cone angle controls. It's a bit sharp in the middle. I'm making sure it's very foggy, so it makes sense that it's foggy. I have leading line with the lights. There's a leading green light, which is very hidden, but it's there. And I'm making sure that it's the brightest spot coming from the back and all of these things. So there's nothing wrong with what you're doing in a creative sense. I like to do that kind of lighting myself. But yeah, there's a lot of nitty-picky things to keep in mind to make sure you have a well-balanced image, that even this chair is purposely lit a little bit and it goes kind of in the dark, even though it doesn't go. Why do I do that? Even though we are commenting in your feedbacks for all of you that it's black clipping, it's because the human brain fills in what that is. The human brain can tell this is a chair or a table. So that's when I will break these rules, is if the asset is somewhat obvious what it may or may not be. And that's when I add just subtle fill light to kind of fill in the blanks. Okay, that's my general feedback.
That's a good portfolio.
Thank you.
It's nice, all the stuff that you're not yours. yours is good.
It's kidding. Yeah, it's a good portfolio.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's a good portfolio, and you're looking for work. I noticed. I'll pass you on actually, because you're obviously at least good enough to try some work. So it's a cool portfolio. Do you have time for one more, Jeremiah?
I do not.
Okay.
It's getting late over here.
Cool. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye. No, thank you for having me on here. It's pretty cool. We can do this again for sure. I just need to find an opportunity to do it. I know that we've planned this for, I don't even know, months.
Yeah,
We'll figure out how to overlap some more. But yeah, you guys know where to find me. I know that you've linked it in your Discord. I've linked your Discord and my Discord. I'll leave it at that. You guys can, if you want to find me, you can find me at the Dynasty Empire.
Cool.
I stare at that server probably too much, but that's okay. That's where I live these days.
I appreciate you teaming up, Jeremiah. I think it's very helpful, I think, for everyone as well to get your point of view and experience. It's at least quite, I mean, I already learned a couple of things, and that you're better in Photoshop in these things, so I need to steal your techniques. So
we can, I have portfolio reviews tomorrow. I have 4 of them, so maybe you can watch me Photoshop. Yeah, I would love to see you use more Photoshop because you don't really use that a lot. At least when I've been watching your streams, it's on and off. It's really dependent on like what we're looking at.
Okay, that's cool. No, I'm hoping to see more. But yeah, we'll catch up a little bit. I'll let you go and you can have some fun. I will try and do 4 more very quickly. Because I see they are there in the queue waiting, so I would just quickly go through them, so they didn't wait and hang out for no reason if that was their intention. So I'd go through a little bit of them. Unfortunately, the next one is about material, so it's kind of your area.
Oh, get out of here! Are you gotta kick me out like you kick everyone out?
No,
it's your thing now.
You can leave on your own.
Oh my god. Fine. All right. I'll see you later. Thanks for having me. I'll see you guys. Let's do this.
You were never here.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
See ya. Bye. Thank you. Cool. Braden, let's do you quickly.
Sure.
No, it's just you and me, bro.
Cool. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
No problem. I will always ask. If I remember, that's a different topic, but I will always ask. Cool, man. So obviously you are a material artist and you are using some of your work. Do you model some of the stuff as well?
Yeah. So everything that I've done on my portfolio is my work. So I've done some environment stuff as well, and do have some prop work, like that gun. But yeah, all of it's my work.
I like your materials. This again, as Jeremiah would say, that you kind of have to remember a little bit about the story of your materials as well. You know, it looks a bit clean to me.
This one was one I did recently for November this year, which is the procedural art challenge stuff. And it's kind of a silly approach to do this kind of thing specifically as a material because there's not really a lot of applicable use for it. But it was a fun challenge to really kind of get a weird use case for the program for Substance Designer. So it was fun, learned a lot of stuff, but realistically, I would never do this if I was going to be doing a crash landing UFO sort of scene, like an environment.
Yeah.
But totally understand what you're saying about, it looks a little clean. Maybe have some more kicked up rubble. And
yeah, for sure. It's, you can also kind of, it's very... Your material distribution of your rocks isn't that random as it looks like. There's a certain tiling or pattern to it to my eyes. So you want to have a think about that, but also when it crashes, what I would like to see that is actually rubbles around here. That's not just a very clean crash and then suddenly there's just rubble around here. When you see on VFX movies and crashes and all those things, there's a rubble after the crash as well. So I think a little bit here would be nice as well. But overall, it's a very clean image. That's kind of comment the lighting at the moment.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm really curious to hear. So I've recently gone back and kind of re-rendered a lot of my materials just to kind of put them in a better light. And I'm doing most of that in Marmoset, messing with some different stuff there. And so I'd love to get your feedback, mostly from a lighting perspective.
Sure.
Would be awesome.
Which one would you prefer?
I don't know any of them. We could look at like the alien skin one, the one to the right of that UFO. Mess with some like subsurface stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I know for me at least as a material artist, obviously my bread and butter that I'm trying to sell to people is going to be PBR, understanding how a material should look, how a surface should look. And I know that lighting can do a lot to kind of tell a story of what that surface looks like. I know I messed intentionally a lot with like the shape of lights and stuff like that to get different kind of specular highlights, so that like this one's meant to look kind of slimy and wet and gross, and can sell that a lot better with a light that kind of shows that instead of having very small specular highlights.
So for me, it looks like you added some kind of blue light somewhere, or is it the material that just happens to be very blue?
There are some blue and purpley stuff in the material itself. Okay.
So for me, I think I can see some warm light on the edges. There's kind of white clipping on the top, so you don't necessarily wanna ruin your material by having this white clipping by adding too much light on the top areas. I would like to see this one. I like that this is the focal point, but at the same time, I don't mind seeing a little bit more detail here. It looks like eyes or something, but you're kind of missing that detail. So when you have eyes, that's the thing with the material artist. If there's a certain material look to an eye, like in real life, it has this little speck that happens around the eyes. So I would have purposely added the lights to get some more highlights on the lights on the material itself by carefully placing the lights. Now you can do that by purposely adding light in the distance, setting a reflection probe, and then kind of placing it in the distance, so you just get that nice speck that you can kind of see the light that you're adding that is showing up, but it's all very random. It's not really helping to shape the material as much, because the most of the focus is here and then it kind of fades away. So I think this one is kind of cool.
Video got compressed a little bit by ArtStation. It looks like I had a higher render.
Yeah, a little grainy. But you being pro, I think it shouldn't be compressed, but that's a different topic altogether. Again, you want to avoid these specs or placement of your light, so it doesn't reveal what type of light source you have. You don't want to. This is not necessarily good. So you want to have one strong light source that kind of shows on this specular on the slime. It's very common. So you want the studio lighting, basically. So you can look up studio lighting, and you want to make sure that area light you place is very carefully placed and kind of enhances the look, and it's the main area of the spec. But right now it's like all over the place, and that doesn't always necessarily help your piece, because you want to show that you can do a lot with one key light. Okay, and then you have a fill light on the edge, so that would be maybe a warmer light, and then if you need it, you can rim light the material if needed. But normally you don't need to do that with the material. So one good light, maybe two, often does the work, I would say.
Okay.
But ignoring that, it does look disgusting.
Thank you.
So swimming is the point. I noticed this one as well. I think you could definitely push the presentation a bit more. I see a little bit dirt here. I like when people are doing this kind of work, that they kind of have this. I like that this kind of shows a bit aging, maybe some. It looks like someone's been biting it or whatever, scratching it. I like those kind of details, but the thing is, when you do your lighting, you want to kind of have that visible too, and you kind of have a very flat lighting, which isn't a bad thing, but don't be afraid to kind of make it a bit brighter, highlighting the image a little bit on this side. Again, you can get away with studio lighting on your work here as well. Maybe even a stronger SGRI map would have done the trick as well. Okay. If that's your workflow, which is what it looks like you're doing.
This one was a little bit different, because it was for one of the meat mat challenges a couple of years ago, and I think there were specific parameters around how you could light it to show it off, basically. That doesn't mean obviously I couldn't have come back and done my own stuff. You're totally right about that. But
yeah, so when you do competition and stuff with rules, so what I would normally do, not that I have ever done too much of competitions, but normally if I were to do it now, I would have submitted it as per needed, and then when I uploaded on ArtStation, I would have made it just better, right? Just
For sure.
do
Okay.
it as you should do it
Yeah.
when you present your work.
Okay.
And here, what you want to do when you have this kind of work and you have this camera type of eye lens, you want to make sure again that your area light, if that's what you want to use or whatever, you could even cheat. You could also use maybe you like the lighting, but you're not able to get the specular effect on the lens on the eye. What you do, you can use an emissive plane. And you can kind of place it carefully around the area you want the highlight to be on the lenses. So you get like this nice little hot spot. Because right now this is disappearing in blackness.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So these are some of the tricks that we use anyway when we light our work. Here, very clean materials. Kind of weird that it's going in here in the edges, when you do construction
stuff.
Yeah, so we want to avoid that kind of balloon stuff as well going in there. That's a no-go here as well. It's tagging stuff, you want to be careful. Also, type of shadows. Again, as in the feedback, when you do fog, you normally wouldn't have fog inside in this kind of setting, first of all. So that's the first comment. The second comment, if you do want to have it, make sure you have the correct cone angle plan. And if you need it, you use a spotlight in your case to make it easy for you. So use one. You should be able to do it without it, just by having outer angle a bit wider, and then you have the inner angle kind of being the focal area. But if that's difficult, you just have 2 spotlight, or you use a point light without shadow. What you are doing correctly is that this is the brightest spot, which a lot of people get wrong. So good job. This is always the brightest spot. Every light source is the brightest spot. Then everything else is just bouncing around. But you have a lot of light coming like here and here. These are things I would definitely look into and kind of making sure it's fading into gradient. And also when you upload this kind of work, this looks like default materials or something added and a lot of stuff. You don't want to do that. So in this case, I would redo this or actually just remove it altogether from the portfolio. Very dark, so you want to make sure that the image itself still is a bit bright, right? You don't want to. It's very common for people to. I don't know why people do it, but it's quite common.
Well, for this one, my intention was to kind of give it more of a mysterious vibe, like have your focal points in the engine, the reactor parts, and then kind of have it fade off into the shadows. So that was my intention, but whether that's done technically incorrectly, I'm hearing you. I'm listening for that. But
so I mean, generally, whether you do it incorrectly or not, the purpose is for you to be comfortable realizing that you can indeed have visible shadows, right? A lot of people think it needs to be black. No, real life is not black. If you turn off the light in your room, your eyes generally will adjust. You're gonna see something. It's impossible not to see anything, even in a dark room. There's always some light creeping too. And now this has some bright areas, so obviously this would be the case here as well, that you are able to see something. But again, you want to make sure you limit the use of fog, because what happens when you do this kind of work like this is you're really not doing helping your work. You kind of. Because what happens is this area here, it just disappears. Because now you have the fog, and even if it's a 3D environment, your image is becoming flat because the fog is on top of all the 3D models, and you're losing the depth. And we don't want to lose the depth. You want to keep the depth, and that's the trick with understanding fog and where to put the fog. So you want to make sure that you have brighter values, contrast, and all these little things, they play quite a bit, and they are kind of important. So I don't know which is the focal area here either, because you have 2 bright spots. One is red, which seems to be the key one because of color, not because of intensity, but you have this one which is equally bright. So in these cases, I would ask myself, do I want this one to be maybe a bit darker? So, and that's also why you want to get rid of the fog sometimes, because if you see, when you get rid of the fog a little bit in the back, you start to pop up. This now becomes, part of the foreground. Okay. So if I just try to ruin your image just to prove a point, so if I do this and this, you see the difference. That's kind of what I'm trying to explain. Is you need to bring your assets in front, but you lose that when you use fog type of lighting, and unless you experience it, you want to be very selective in where you add. So you would add it in the background on the left side, maybe, or you would add it just in the background. You wouldn't add it in the front and then this way.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. I think that should give you some feedback for now. Do you have any thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Nope, no thoughts. I do appreciate the feedback. It's awesome, and definitely excited to implement it.
Cool. I'm looking forward to see if it's implemented, and also thank you for showing up, and have a lovely day.
You bet. You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Let's see. Amara, are you still around? If you are, you can type in the private chat, even though I see you are in the stream. Probably going to go quickly through your stuff as well. I am, however, getting a bit tired. Normally, do you have a microphone, Amara? Cool, I'll add you to the stream now. Hey, Amara. How are you doing? Let me unmute you. There you go. Now I can hear you.
Yeah.
Cool. So, lighting, huh? It's a similar feedback from. Luckily, it tends to be the same feedback for most people, actually. Luckily, but it's the same here as well. You wanna, when I look at your pieces, and I'm guessing, looking at your work, did you go on the CGMA course?
Sorry?
Did you do a CGMA lighting course or any course?
Yeah, I had a course I took a course at CGMA. So
Okay.
this is for a course.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. So for me, I think, don't know what feedback. Who did you have it in CGMA?
Yes.
Do you know the name of the tutor?
It was Peter Tran.
So I don't know what feedback Peter Tran gave you, but generally you want to avoid these hotspots, especially when there's light nearby. It doesn't really make sense to have hotspots like this. I like that you have a clear focal point. But one of the challenges, because when you use these fluorescent light, they tend to be a little bit diffuse because they are, they're rectangular. And one thing I notice is your shadows are very specific and they are very sharp. So if I point out where I'm looking, I am looking at this shadow here. And that wouldn't happen. That would be very diffused and it would be very specific for the light source itself. So when I look at it, you want to make sure that there's some control of the lights being a little bit bright, and you wouldn't have this one too bright, because my brain goes, why is this one brighter than all of the other lights? So you kind of want to make sure you have a balance there. There's also some material things. It's a very old scene, so it's generally very reflective. but definitely want to control this area a bit. The emissive might be too bright, even though the light is supposed to be bright. But when you have a bright light like this, it would make sense that it's casting more red light. And I don't see a lot of red light. I see this very strong light, and it's dominant, and these aren't really doing a lot. So that's also conflict that happens of interest. I do see this one goes down there, I see this one goes down there, but there's also just a balance of color I would work on here as well. I see you have different ideas, that's very cool.
Yeah, in this case, I was trying to make get close to the concept art. So the concepts are in the end, actually.
I mean, this one is pretty nice. It's a bit too bright, but it works. Yeah, I've done the Halo 4 one as well. So you can see on the concept art, you know, it's fading. It doesn't have the same hotspot that you have here. You know, it's more diffuse. It's not as bright. It's kind of fade. So these are one of the details I can notice just there. It has more of a bloom to kind of enhance, and also lens flare. Something I don't know if you went through it, but that's something you could do. The red color here as well is less. It's not as strong as yours, and it goes more subtly down. Now that's kind of something to work on as well. But at the same time, you can see it lights a lot. It lights all the way to the character with this red, and then it's balanced with some bright light in the back. That kind of again gives this character this blue balance on 1/3 of the image. But in your case, the blue is 2/3 of the image instead of 1/3 of the image. So you could have pushed the red to be a bit more, and then the blue to be a little bit less. I think this one is pretty close, except that it's a bit darker. Your reference is a bit brighter, so in this case it's a bit opposite. You could have gone for darker material. I would have maybe edited the material on top just to respect the reference a little bit. I would probably have cheated with these tubes as well. I would probably have had many of them and just placed them as close to each other as possible whenever possible to get like this long line if possible. Certain things like that I would do. This reference is, these emissive light aren't as bright as this, so this would be a little less bright. Your color is also a bit redder. It would be less desaturated, this one here. And it has a different green color. It has a more saturated, deeper green color here, whilst yours is too desaturated. So the red light will be less saturated, and the green will be more saturated if you were to get this color palette. Make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I think this is your best one so far. I think it's pretty cool, pretty good. Too emissive red, white, blue light. You know, it's very subtle here, so you would probably dim down this version a little bit. Even the red is very subtle here as well, so you would dim down the red a little bit, and again make sure that the red goes long enough, because you can see it does go a bit of this red, so you want to make sure that's balanced but not too much. But that's why I think this one is pretty good. I think this one also is pretty good, but it's too blue and too emissive. Again, you want to dim it down slightly but not too much. So these two I think are pretty good. Yeah.
So okay, I have a really big problem with emissive.
It's okay. It's not a problem. So when you do this scene, you actually have to fix this statue because it's not actually working correctly, even from Epic. So you have to go in and fix it. That's why you have a lot of this darkness that happens in this scene. So you have to go in and fix the occlusion or something, if I remember correctly, to make that actually bright and reflective and work correctly. Very dark, you want to avoid all this pitch darkness. You want to make sure that the light's bouncing in a little bit. But I see you have an interesting approach to color. But again, fire doesn't give the sharp shadows. Here, if you're using say a point light, which is very expensive and you shouldn't be using it, you have to increase the radius, soft radius settings on your lights to get the more diffuse shadow. If you want to cheat, you can also use less quality of the shadow to get a bit more of a softer shadow. So here I would work more on the shadow quality, so to represent and is properly reflected based on the type of light source you have around. Okay.
Okay.
Also in this case, because it's warm light, you wouldn't have white fog, right? The fog and the light kind of works together. So if you had made this bit more warmer, it would have been a bit more better piece.
Okay.
Overall, it's interesting to watch, and definitely you're having fun with color and ideas and creativity.
Yeah, I like to play with colors a lot.
Yeah, it's good. I like what you're doing again, but your images are becoming very flat the minute you use fog and God rays, so you're losing a lot of the quality of your image, and you're kind of overdoing the colors a little bit. So you're having a lot of creativity, which is good, but I think when you're learning lighting, you want to try and learn the stuff I teach my students over at Lighting, but we try and teach students the realistic lighting and kind of respecting the tonal values, the exposure, the emissiveness. So you really have to kind of get a better understanding of those things before you start playing too much with, being creative with colors, because you need to understand the fundamental of lighting first. So it's the same thing here, that everything is orange, so it's also understanding that you don't want everything to be orange, for example, and understanding how do you break it. And torches don't give long shadows, for example, so there's another thing as well, and they don't give sharp shadows either. So there are a lot of things to work on and improve on, but generally, it's obviously a good start, because you're obviously learning from your first course, but generally there's a lot to work on that should have been pointed out as well, I think, for you. I think if you learn fundamental lighting in the sense of how value works and color works and balance those things, I think eventually it's gonna be fun for you, because then you will be able to express your color and your love for color a bit more easily than you're doing now. It's I'm not saying you can't do it. You can see I do it all the time in my lighting as well. It's using color and shape and reflection and everything is there. Blue color, warm light, rimming, all of these things. It exists in my work too, but you need to understand value first before you can do anything else, and how much is how much. How does the light spread? How does it affect your shadows? And just generally, these things is kind of important to understand when you do this kind of lighting. You can see the same thing here. I'm doing for the inside. It's soft shadow. I don't have a sharp shadow. It's softening, and then it's kind of disappearing. You can see here as well. You have this effect here. And kind of making sure that there's some fill light that's different color, it's hitting, but there's not total blackness, it's not bright either. These are the key things that we want to work on. Make sense?
Yeah, totally. Thanks. I think theory is really important here.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully that's useful. And thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your time. I appreciate that as well. And yeah, I'll just keep moving forward and just stay on our Lightning Bot server as well. And there's always help to get there as well. So yeah, do you have anything else you want to add?
Not really, but thanks for your feedback. That was really useful right now that I'm starting with this. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you, and have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Alba, you around? Alba. Let's do it. Yes. Do you have a microphone, Alba? Cool. Add you into the call. Hey, Alba.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Well, I'm looking the bebop. Sorry, I have a potato English right now. So
No, don't worry. That's good. Just looking quickly at your stuff. As we share the screen. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. Just I see you also like color and creativity in color. It's pretty cool. I think we posted this somewhere, no? I think I've seen it in the Discord server already. I think in this case, you still want to make sure that the sky is somewhat bright because the moon is there. So this area would still be a bit bright. And then when you have moon in this direction, you would expect the trees to kind of be silhouette rim light, and so is this area. You want to kind of enhance those pieces to break them from the background. So when you do lighting, you also just image really in general. When you look at images, you want to make sure that you can see that it's 3D. You want to make sure you can see the depth, and that's where light come in. And here I would have rimmed light using spotlight if I needed to make sure this is separated a little bit from the background, which is the rocks, and this is the from the sky basically. Yeah, I like you trying to do it here, which is basically what you would be doing here, or compositionally you would maybe not keep this around, you would maybe remove it altogether. These are also some of the choices. And you want to avoid these tangents, which is basically having 3D models on top of other 3D models. You want to try and have a clean image. You would have these maybe on the right side instead, and pointing towards your focal point, which would be, around here basically. You can see that you're trying to do it, but you're also, there's basically two values here, so you want to make sure that this is technically and in theory the brightest. You can see it's the same case with your references. The sky is still very bright. It's rim lighting here. You can see it's pretty bright, and it's not really as bright here, so you want to make sure you follow those ideas and references. And you can see, even the rocks, there's a certain brightness. You can still see something in the shadows. The same you can see here on this reference on the edges of the walls. So this would be the wall representation, and this would be the wall representation. So we would try and make sure that these are properly lit up basically to kind of enhance your pieces a little bit. So when I say that, it's really not too complicated really. Stuff works. And you would just try and bring out the pieces a little bit where you need to make it, a little bit brighter. And it's the same here as well. Want to make sure the light hits here, kind of, shaping this a little bit. It's kind of the same here, making sure that this one is kind of being shaped. I'm doing very subtle changes at the moment. You want to make sure that these things exist in your pieces too. Kind of work around that. Because you're already doing it, it's just that you need to push it a little bit more to a little bit higher level.
It looks so better.
Don't be afraid to go a little bit over. It's better that you, because this is still an artistic piece. You're meant to have a little bit fun and show your work. Show how light works if you need to. Just a little bit there, maybe a little bit there, maybe a little bit there, and then if need to, you sometimes go a bit overboard. A little bit there. That's the bright spot on the edges. I'm not touching this because I think this is already pretty good. So I'm not doing it too much because it's already too bright. And it's just subtle, understanding shape and form a little bit. And then let's see if it wants me to do it. Go, I don't know how much we can go. I think I can pick shadow because it's pretty dark piece. And I go here and maybe try and kind of enhance the piece a little bit, so it's popping up the sky just a little bit off the image. Okay, so you see the difference?
Yes.
Okay,
so
that's basically what I mean when I'm looking at the pieces in general, and I can spot that in general when I'm looking at all your pieces. It's just the same principles I want to give. I spend a lot of time with my students who join the mentorship with the same thing. It's the same thing here. You're losing the quality of your image because of the use of fog. Again, it's a very common problem I have to pick out. It's okay, you're having fun and you're learning. Nothing wrong with that. But personally, I try and, because you're losing all the black. Because of the light is kind of evening out the shadow a bit too much. So here you would try and make it a bit darker. And then you would try and figure out, you don't have a lot of information here either, It's that's not very good just having this area, because you want more information because there's a lot of light here. So you want to make sure that there is more information you can use and work with. So again, we want to make sure you're comfortable, whatever you're doing, just play around, with painting with light now, just having a bit of fun. Boom, boom. Do a little bit over here. Not be uncomfortable. Look around a little bit. Think about it. Then maybe, I don't know, maybe you want to make this a bit more brighter. This one, maybe you want to go a little bit overboard. And then sometimes you might to review it and you might go, okay, it's too much or it's too little. That's perfectly fine. But this image is also very dark. You have light hitting there, but I don't see anything here. So you want to make sure that's a bit visible as well. And then sometimes you might go, okay, you don't want the light to reveal too much in some areas. Maybe this one is too distracting. Maybe make this one a bit darker. Just simple stuff like this. I mean, it's not simple because you have to actually do the stuff, but it's just about, you're breaking the image and kind of crunching the image a little bit to give it that subtle detail that is kind of missing. in some of these works that we have, generally speaking, really. And when I do this, it suggests to me, generally that's, struggling a little bit because there's not enough information. And then you also want to think a little bit about your color choices. You want to get some warmth in. I think you could probably have some fun with more green, maybe a little bit purple, and then we go a little bit blue, and suddenly you get a more balanced image because you want to maintain some of the color of your actual assets, textures, and materials, and you can see everything becomes the same color here. You're losing a little bit of the detail of the books and everything, even the white color. So you want to kind of balance out that and bring that image out. Make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
But I have a problem with that thing because I use a reference for a film, and in the film, the lights, for example, was extremely blue-green turkey, and yes, I like that.
Yeah.
It's not a problem to change. So okay, you have the reference, and it's not a problem to change the aspect of the reference. I don't know if I explain it.
So here, obviously, it's color graded a lot. The light.
I don't think how to translate. Sorry.
But when I do this kind of work, either I add the color of the light ahead of time, because if I'm going to color grade it, the reason in movies they can't, it's expensive, it's difficult for them to do it on set, so they have to do something afterward. We can do it inside the engine, inside the software. So I would just make this the color when I liked it, so I don't have to color grade it afterwards, because then I know this is orange. Because if you color grade it, the whole image gets the same color.
Okay.
Let's see. I think I have an old piece somewhere. It's actually kind of doing the same thing. So this one is greenish. I think it was this one. It's kind of the same thing I was trying to do here as well. It's just the same thing with getting the green tone. This is one of my earlier pieces when I was doing some stuff, and I getting some green tone and then kind of figuring out. And the problem here is it gets too dark, which is fine because the light is coming from the back. But the problem here is then you're struggling back and forth with the color grading that you're struggling with. So yeah, I mean, it does take a time. You need to get some help in these areas, of course, and learn a couple of things. So it makes sense you're having some challenges with this. Another thing is to add color to the fog. It's that you keep everything white and then you add in the colors afterwards if you need to do that. So you can see this is kind of warm, and then this is the green light, and the fog is affected by it. So you could have a white light, but then you can change the color of the fog as well if you wanted to. So anyways, but hey, you're learning, and that's the point. You have to just keep trying. And this one is pretty cool though. I like the acoustic here and the nice balance of light. The range of the light might be too far in some cases, but overall it's not too bad. It's a bit different than some of the other pieces. The only issue here, I would probably not compete so much with these three lights. I would probably try and balance this out. So I would most likely have I would have considered probably balancing the colors a little bit, and also maybe dimming down maybe the middle just to darken it out a little bit, and not have it take too much of the attention really. Maybe even turn it off actually in some cases. Because right now you have 3 lights and you don't really need all of them, to be honest. That's probably what I would have done. Maybe even turn off one side. I might have just had fun with one side and kind of make this darker and kind of let this light make it dominant on the blue side, and then this is purple. You could have tried that as well, actually. It's always funny with the windows. People are doing different things with the windows as well. Yeah, this is definitely an improvement here, at least. I'm just gonna see what happens if you want a bit more purple. Yeah, I probably will push the purple a little bit more, actually. In this case, because you wouldn't have purple in real life in a tube like this with water anyway, so you could have some fun and be a bit more creative. But I would definitely not have all 3 lights competing for attention. I would have dimmed down a little bit. That's good. It's cool. You're doing good.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I'm sorry for my English.
No, it's all right. No problem. I have a lot of students from other countries, so they have different level of English. It's not a problem at all. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully that was useful. And keep watching, hang out, join the Discord server, and get some help. And have a nice night. And if you need any help, you know where to find me, right?
Okay, thank you, Amit. Bye bye.
No problem. Bye. Next up, I guess we could take Filippo. Are you still around? And unless Eric, Amy, Sandra, and Alper is jumping into the call, Filippo, you'll be the last one I talk to. Cool.
Hello.
Hi, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am tired, but other than that, I'm good. So, with 2.5 hours, really should stop doing these 2.5 hour sessions, because my quality of help also drops a lot for people like you come at the end. Like, I'm already tired, Let's see. Yeah, it's it's not a bad piece. Yeah, I like it. It's good. You have a little bit bounce here. That's what I like to see as well. The only issue here, there's a difference in intensity on these two. This one looks also more white. This one looks a bit different. So you have a focal point of light coming here, but this one is the brightest. So here I would think a little bit about how we understand light and direction and composition of light, pool of light. So if we have a look at the saturation value, this seems to be bright, but this seems like you want me to look here, is what it looks like based on your composition and your choice. So with that assumption, like, we're gonna pretend that is the case because it looks like it. This one.
Yeah, that's the case.
So this one would be technically the one that's should be a bit brighter. And maybe I will exaggerate just for fun to make this like really hot. And maybe like this. And I will probably dim this down a little bit, and I will dim down probably this a little bit. Okay, so I will do this instead.
Definitely.
And it's kind of the same thing in some of these pieces here as well. So we want to have control our story. We want to control our intention behind our assets, the story, the texture, the material, the presentation of our work. And understanding what it makes sense and doesn't make sense. So some of the things we do here is you have something going on here, but it's kind of difficult for me to understand where you want me to look. And also you have again the issue with the competing pool of light. So when I say pool of light, you have a bright, dark, which is very good. We want to do that in lighting. We want to have that kind of balance and everything. And you want to dim it down a little bit here as well. And this is already very, very bright. So you might want to kind of think about how this light is bouncing around the scene a little bit. I like this here. This is good. Where you can kind of do a bit more. And sometimes, depending on what you're doing, so you see the difference.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the things you need to work on your piece, and your work is kind of doing that balance. But also at the same time, I also have to ask myself, does it make sense to have all of this bright? Or would it make more interesting to make it dark or on purpose? And again, in this case, I might even go and say, okay, you know what? I want the light is really struggling to come in this area. So we're gonna just make it dark. You know what? I like the blue here, but it's maybe you say, okay, it's supposed to be a bit darker, more dramatic, maybe, because you have pretty good light going around, so you could probably get away actually with more contrast in some of these areas, so you don't have this weird speck of light from the skylight or whatever taking too much of attention. So see the difference.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do, and obviously there's always more to do. You don't think this is all I would do. This is definitely not all I would do, because I can see that you don't have a lot of information going on here in general. So I would maybe dim it down a bit. Maybe I would brighten the image a little more. Have play around a little bit, because this is all about balance and values. So again, I spend a lot of this time with my students. In my mentorship lessons, we go through this on a regular basis, and explain it on all my videos and recordings as well. This is the key thing. It doesn't matter how good you are in Unreal materials if you do not know how to present this kind of stuff. And this is why I focus on even in these sessions, because I want everyone to understand that. It really goes a long way if you do that. And then there's also the color. Okay, it's also understanding how to push the color a little bit, and here I think more warm color would be more better. So just pushing a little bit warm color, you get suddenly a very, very different work of art. So you have your version, and then you have my version. It has a very different focal point, color, tone, and very, very clear direction. So would I do this personally? Probably not. I would probably have tilted the light more, and I would probably have the rubble probably over there. I would probably have something of interest, like a skeleton or someone running, or maybe someone coming into the archway and they having their hand up in the air looking, tripping blind. So certain details I would have done for this environment, because I tried lighting this environment myself a year or 2 years ago, and I didn't submit it on my ArtStation, but I downloaded like spiders and everything, and they were crawling up the wall and everything, but it was so much work, so I gave up. But it's a cool scene actually, but this kind of scene will really do very cool by actually adding more spider assets or spider web, and it will be a really cool scene. So I would actually do that for this particular scene probably.
So something to tell more of a story.
Yeah, it's very important, even as lighting artists, to understand storytelling and mood and emotions and feelings, and I drill that a lot in my students. This is one of the reasons they get work is the focus I put into this skill set. And I only do these sessions every few months. I don't do it often, because normally I do it for my students. But I think these are the key things you want to kind of have an understanding of. And I also think generally, it doesn't have to be warm or filter. It could also be a more greenish, dirty tone, you know, a little bit of that can also work in this kind of environment. So using this, so that also works. So understanding these things, I know it takes time. So unless you have someone who helps you with these things on a regular basis, it takes a lot of time. It took me 10 years of painting and photography and all of these things to be able to even explain to you what I'm seeing and what you need to do, you know. So, you know, don't worry about it. Just keep practicing. Come back to our server, ask for some help. You know, I'm more than happy to give as much help as I can. Yeah, so that's the general feedback. Again, the same feedback here. You have all these specs for no reason. I don't see any light sources for this, and it's coming from the other direction so far. You know, and then you have this light, but this one is the brightest. So you're having too many lights, and they're competing with each other. So you would, in theory, remove some of the lights and just see how much can you pull off with just one light lighting this area, reducing the fog, and you would have a more contrast and more interesting image. I like the idea of what you're going, but again, you have too much of one thing basically. So a very good practice is to do a lot with one light.
Yeah, less is more, right?
Yeah, at least in the beginning, and then eventually if you do cinematic lighting, it's a different story, of course, because then you might have more fun and you will look at this box and go, okay, this is boring, let's add a fake room light. Okay, this isn't having the specular effect, I want this specular effect here. So you might add light, you know, and cheat your ass off. That's a different topic altogether. But yeah, these are the things you want to pay attention to. So yeah, hopefully that's useful for you as well. And do you have anything else you want to add?
Not really. That's been very, very useful. So thank you very much.
Okay, cool. That's about it. I think there are more portfolio pieces, but I think people should just come back another time. And before we leave, I could just mention we have a lighting mentorship as well for people who are professional learning, want to improve at lightingbot.com. You cannot buy anything anymore. You have to book a call, and I have to talk to you. You have to look at your art station and kind of go through this process that you guys already gone through for me to decide if I want you to join. So if anyone wants to join, you can, you could be able to learn a little bit and do different things. So if you're interested, let me know on Discord or whatever, and I'm more than happy to help you guys out. So thank you again for tuning in, and we managed to go 2 hours and 42 minutes. I think the record is 3 hours, but I think I'm gonna skip some of the others for now. So Eric, please post in the future. Amy, please post in the future. Sandra, I've already given you feedback because you're actually a student now, so you don't need it. And Alper, definitely a lot of feedback will be given to your work too. So thank you for trusting me, and thank you for asking for help. And yeah, have a good day, and I'll see you all around. And Filippo, thank you again for your time as well, and have a good day as well.
Thank you. You too.
No
bye
problem. Bye bye. Thank you, everyone. I'll be ending the stream now. It's been. See you guys around. Toodles. Tada. Bye bye.